Hi everyone and welcome very much to my channel, Karoline's Knits, where I talk about everything that I'm knitting. My name is Karoline and I live in Scotland with my partner Ben and our 5-month-old Border Collie Labrador cross puppy Fela. They are currently downstairs. I think Ben is watching the rugby, so you may hear that. I actually filmed this podcast last weekend, but I just didn't really like how it turned out, so I decided to re-film today. I am in a little bit of a rush because I'm actually going to Glasgow today, which is very exciting. I'm meeting a friend that I've not seen for a long time. So for the first time in a long time, I have prepared notes for today so that I don't waffle on forever. So I'm gonna be maybe a little bit more speedy and less waffly than I usually am. So I thought I'd start with what I'm wearing today. This is my Filcolana Nordstrand sweater designed by Lana Gatto, and it is my latest finished project. I knit this in 1 strand Peruvian Highland wool and 1 strand Filcolana alva. So Peruvian Highland wool from Filcolana is 100% Peruvian wool, and then alva is 100% alpaca. So at least for me, this is next to skin soft. I'm only wearing like a strappy top underneath, and it's usually fine, but it is a little bit hot because I was rushing to get ready today. This is my first colour work yoke, or any colour work ever, to be honest, and I think it went fine. It does have a little bit of puckering, so I will also pop in the cutaway for me wearing it. I knit this in a size XL, which is a size down than what I'd usually knit, just to have a slightly more fitted shape. I also shortened the body a little bit because I thought it had quite a good length, and for the sleeves I went down a size, half a needle size on the ribbing to have tighter ribbing. Yes, I should also say that basically I found this pattern and I've had so much interest when it comes to this, thanks to Simona from Knitt. You might know of Simona because I talk about her basically every episode, but she also kindly gifted me some of the alva and Peruvian. Basically she gifted me the marzipan alva and the sort of red that I use for the colour work. After I had ordered it, she kindly said, no, that's a gift for me, just for full transparency. But I saw Simona's version and I just really like it. Lana Gatto is a Danish designer that does, if you like this kind of sort of traditional yoke kind of look, she's a really good designer, and she's done quite a few free patterns for Filcolana. So if you've never taken a look at Filcolana's website, all the patterns are free, which is really great if you just want to kind of gauge how difficult it is. I also think if you do need help with, I guess, the techniques, it's also better if it's a pattern, you know, everyone can have access to. It does have pretty long floats, especially here at the top. So I think the reason that I have puckering is because I didn't catch my floats, and I probably should have, and it's made it bunch up a little bit. So I've sort of given you the basics of it, and one thing I'd like to sort of talk about is my yarn choice. Alva is one of Filcolana's sort of newer yarns, and I know some people don't get on with alpaca, but I always find alpaca to be extremely soft. It's a fibre that personally for me has always worked really well. You may know that I prefer Suri alpaca over mohair, for example, when it comes to like that kind of fluffy look. So this is originally knit 1 strand of the Peruvian Highland wool like I've used, but then it has a strand of mohair knit, and I find that the one sweater I have with Filcolana's silk mohair called Telia, I do find that a little bit itchy, so I decided to replace it with the alva, which gauge wise should work out about the same. I did gauge swatch, I did hit gauge. However, after washing, it's like the fabric kind of changed, so it's gone, I wouldn't say it was like very drapey before, but it definitely was drapier. It had a lot more like stretch in it, and it's almost like I've managed to to like felt it a little bit in my washing process, which is really strange because I have washed my sweaters the same way for ages, right? Like I haven't really changed how I do it. So basically I let it soak with wool wash, and then I put it in to spin on my washing machine, and I've done that since I saw Petite Knit do it over a year ago. It's like, Petite Knit knits so many sweaters, so if she doesn't have any issues, I don't see why I should. So I don't know if I've felt it with my washing method, but I kind of be surprised because again, this is literally how I wash everything. But it does give a slightly sort of denser, I don't know how to show it, it gives a slightly denser, like you can see how little stretch like the ribbing has, and this has Italian bind off as well, so it doesn't even have a tight bind off. And I also noticed that after washing, the ribbing really like contracted, I guess is the word for it, like it changed how it looks. It almost looks like I've made a twisted rib, but I haven't. This is a completely normal rib, whereas before, you know, the rib was very much like quite, you know, when ribbing, it's like the knit stitches like are so wide that you can't see the pearls. That's very much what it was like before washing. I do prefer the way this has turned out, if I'm honest, with the ribbing. It also means that I see some of them gets like a slight puckering, and they get that thing when you have a really long roll neck, that this really like goes out really far, which obviously this has essentially no give, so it hasn't really changed. I will say though that I knit this because I live in Scotland and it is really cold, and well, not really cold, it isn't, but it is fairly chilly during sort of the winter months. And now with Fela the puppy, obviously I'm out walking a lot more, and I wanted something that I could wear underneath a raincoat, so that you don't need a thick winter coat when walking necessarily, but it's nice to have some wool that's a bit more like heat regulating on top of being warm, and this definitely fit the bill. I therefore also wanted something that was quite like, I wouldn't say a 3-strand mohair jumper, because Fela is also a jumper, haha. And I'd be nervous she'd pull the stitches, and that I don't think her, you know, her paws, like her little claws, couldn't get into this. So for me, this yarn choice is good, but I don't know if it'd be for everyone. I actually think this might not be too far away from the gauge that you need from a zipper sweater from Petite Knit, and I actually think this would be brilliant for that, because it has that kind of sturdy, thicker wool feel instead of like the drape of a merino. So yeah, I don't know, I don't hate my yarn choice, but I also didn't expect it to turn out this way, so yeah, word of caution. But all in all, this has been one of those projects I've had so much interest in, which is always really funny how sometimes you knit something and you get loads of comments and questions and everyone seems to just immediately take to it, and sometimes you know, you just don't get the same. And I did really enjoy knitting it. Knitting the yoke took as long as the rest of the sweater for me. I ended up holding the main colour on like this part of my finger and the second strand here. I think I spoke about that last time, and I think that really made it a lot more efficient for me. So certainly not the last time I'm knitting a colourwork sweater. So that is my finished object. As usual, I should say I leave all my social links down below. I leave links to the patterns, the yarns, the colours, all of those things are always linked down below. I try to keep my projects on Ravelry relatively up to date, so with what size I'm knitting, what needle size and all of these things, but I am due a bit more of an update, especially on the stash front, but we'll get to that later. Today we actually have more finished objects than I usually show, because I have been I was so lucky, I should say, to test knit for my friend Laura from Penroseknits, and she basically designed some patterns that goes under the umbrella School Run, and within that she's designed a hat, a headband and a mitten. These patterns were released yesterday. Will be in a few more days when I release this podcast, but you should still be able to get the first week discount, so I'll make sure to link it down below. So I'm just going to show you what finished, because this is definitely more than I usually do. So the first thing I'll show you sort of in 3 different categories. I should tip this up. So I started knitting this as like a big gauge swatch. So this is the school run hat in the toddler size with double pointed like top. So essentially this is done with Kitchener stitch, and it should fit quite well on a little baby head. And then you will notice the little picot edge as well that goes around. I should say that I was an idiot and didn't read the pattern properly, so I didn't realise that she gave measurements in inches first instead of centimetres. So in actuality this picot edge should be longer. But I actually kind of like how the little, you can see the little pearl bumps kind of peek through, or you could just wear it folded down like this as well, I guess. So I think this will be for my cousin Merle, who turns 1 in December, so I think I'll send it to her. I used this as a gauge swatch because I wanted to test out my yarn choice, which I don't have any full balls of anymore. I don't even think I have the belly bands. No belly bands either. Anywhere that I can see. It's I used Lana Gatto's Maxi VIP, which is very much it is technically DK, but I do think, I don't know if you can tell with my nails like peeking through, it is not like a very tight gauge. So I tend to find that it runs a bit thinner than other sort of like light worsted kind of weight yarns, and it tends to have like, this is like what I would call quite drapey for, like it has a lot of give, it has a lot of stretch, but it's very, very soft because it's 80% merino and 20% cashmere. So Lana Gatto Maxi VIP I bought from Knitt, and I think Simona still has some colours in stock. So this is one of the softest yarns I've ever knit with. It's incredibly like soft, so I think as long as you're not allergic to wool, I would presume everyone could wear this. This ball was left over from my Wednesday sweater from Petite Knit that I knitted earlier this year. So I had just 1 ball left, and I used less than that for this. So it's perfect if you're wanting to use up leftovers. What I really loved about these accessories patterns, because as you might have noticed, I don't knit many accessories, at least not so far, is that this has basically only stockinette. Well, this only has stockinette in it. So because you're knitting it in around, you don't have lots of purling, it's not like a full head of ribbing. So if you're like rushing to get Christmas presents done, these patterns are brilliant because they're all mainly stockinette, and they use like a weight of yarn that knits up quite fast. Obviously with this being DK, you could also use a fingering weight and a mohair to meet gauge. You could use 2 strands of fingering weight. You could use DK if you wanted something slightly thicker. I'll show you another yarn that I used that gives a more like woolly feel. Basically these are perfect for doing really quick Christmas knits. I think this hat I could knit up in a casual afternoon. I could have it, you know, in a few meetings and it basically be done. So really brilliant. Without giving too much away from how the pattern works, you also do a single short row, which if you've never had to do a short row might be interesting to try as well. So obviously that was a gauge swatch for the sort of adult version. Just making sure, I think I might have to get this, I washed this before, I washed this after I sewed it down, so this is a bit floppy, but maybe I can just pop it on so you can see. So this is the school run hat, which is knit in the smallest adult size. I have an incredibly small, awkwardly shaped head, so if it fits me, it should fit most adults. It once again has the picot edge just along here, and I decided, so after knitting this I realised I would be a tiny bit under gauged, like I needed a bit more thickness basically. I needed less stitches per 10 centimeters, so I decided to add a strand of mohair. This was a different leftover bit of Maxi VIP, So this is knitted in the cream colour, whereas this was knitted in pure white. And then I held one strand of the Qing Fibre Silk hand-dyed silk mohair in the colour Rambutan, which I bought from Loop London last summer. This white strand I used in my toddler sweater, and those balls were left over from that. And this I used in my sweater number 9. And it's so interesting with my hair because it knits up so differently when you knit it up with a, like, depending on what kind of, you know, you think a strand is. But I quite like how it's turned out with, like, you can see the slight, like, colour change all around it. It did grow, I think my row gauge especially grew a little bit in the wash, so I think I still need to fiddle with it, but it still fit quite good, and it's not slouchy, which I much prefer. I hate slouchy hats, they are not very comfortable on me. So I finished that as well, which was lovely. Again, I think this I finished, I have a knitting group that you might have heard. You might have heard a few podcasters talk about that, hint hint. I finished basically the whole hat doing knitting group. So again, another gift that you can easily make quite quickly if you're panicking about last minute Christmas gifts. You could easily, again, the gauge is obviously the same, so you can easily substitute yarns. And also, if you didn't want to, you wouldn't have to make the picot edge. You could just keep that very plain, or do maybe pearl bumps for folding it over, and it could be quite a unisex pattern really. So I finished those two. They're knitted. This one I knitted on 4mm, and this I knitted on 4.5, which is definitely within the range of what I really like. The next thing I finished was a surprise release yesterday, and this was another pattern that I finished quite fast. You may be able to tell where this leftover was from. So this is the school Run Headband, which has like this cute little twist, and obviously the picot. I actually can't remember last time I owned a headband, but it is really, really practical. I know that Laura says that she uses headbands more because you can always have a ponytail, and I didn't really think about that until I was going for a walk yesterday and realised that while hats are maybe warmer, headbands are more practical for me, because when I walk the dog I need to have hair out of my face, you know, it's a lot of hair to have flying around in the wind. This was also fast knit. This is however knitted flat, so actually it took me longer than I maybe was expecting, but certainly still a project that you know, on a Sunday just casually knitting, you could easily finish all of it. And then yeah, it's nicely sewn up, and I really like that Laura had included in all of these. It's quite detailed patterns. It's not like one of those patterns you buy and it's like cast on 60 stitches, knit, you know, this many centimeters, then knit this many centimeters, knit this many centimeters, weave in ends, and you're done. I thought she took a lot of time and effort to make it quite accessible patterns. So I think all of these are quite good to sort of have around if you have, like me, sort of typically knit in that kind of gauge range that these yarns fit, because you can always make leftover projects, and all the sizes go down to most of them go down to baby up till quite big adult sizes, so there's a lot of flexibility. But yes, I really like this. This I used Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool that I had left over from this sweater, and I used just over, basically I used 1 full ball and just a few like scrappy leftover bits that, you know, when you like finish a sleeve and you don't want to like use that little like bit that's left when you go back on the body, because you know you just have to use new yarn, that kind of leftover. So really not very much yarn. For this I think I used just over 2 balls. I used just under 2 balls. This is what I had left of my second ball, and I think the first one I'd used like 5 grams of. So again, not very much yarn. At least for me, all of this is very much within the amount of yarn that I would typically have left after knitting like a full project. And so yes, it's been feeling good for once to actually use up some of the yarn in my stash. So I finished all of these, and then I have these, and then I have one half finished project because it's a pair. So this is the Scroll Run Mittens. I'm going to pop it on the watch, or the hand I don't have a watch on, just so you can see it better. So these are little fingerless mittens, and you can see once again that you have obviously goes up to the thumb. You have picot edge down here and a picot edge that goes along the hand. So this is, I finished this literally last night, and I'm so excited that I can show it off because this was quite a big accomplishment, and I'll come back to why, but I'm just quickly gonna talk about the colour I used. So this yarn, which gives you can see like the variegation, you know what I mean, that comes from the yarn. So down at the bottom here, that is single strand, and then here is 2 strands held together and single strand up here. So you can sort of see how it sort of changes. However, this was less busy, I'm gonna say, than I expected based on the skein and the winded up ball. So this is the winded up ball. Do you see that? Quite a lot of colours in it. So basically it's a base that has quite like a frosty pink, a cream, and like a red squirrel type colour. You can see this is Avetta's red squirrel, and they're basically the same colour. And I've had this in my stash for a while. I bought this on sale from Sakami Yarns. Sakami Yarns is one of my favourite yarn dyers, so I'll certainly link to them down below. I think they have a beautiful eye for dyeing colours like this that are like colourful but still weirdly neutral. And how cute are these together? So you have like a bit of neutral and like a pop of colour. The reason these were such a big accomplishment is that I'm going to basically start a new segment on the podcast called the Sock Saga, because I really want to learn how to knit socks. So the sort of like topic, I guess you can say today, that I would love to hear your thoughts on in the comments is that by now I feel like I've mastered, like this year really, I learned to knit in May 2020, and I feel like since then I've really like learned a lot of techniques and mastered a lot of things quite fast. Like I feel like in my first year I got very good with garment knitting, and at the very end of last year I did my first short rows, which felt like quite a big accomplishment. The list of techniques that I mastered this year that I am really proud of is chart knitting from charts. Like lace knitting felt like a really big deal the first time I did that. There's tabular cast on and cast off that I, for example, used on this sweater, become my favourite if you can see the cast on and cast off. I obviously did my first colour work, which felt like quite a big deal. In general, I just feel like I've become much better at reading and understanding quite complicated patterns. And so for example, the office sweater that I test knitted for Knit Flitter had like different frequencies of increases and short rows and all of this. There was a lot to keep track of, and all of this I've managed. You might think, wow, that's a lot of things to learn in 1 year, and I guess it is, but I just felt like there was one big skill that I still haven't really mastered, which is small circumference knitting. I have never knitted a pair of socks. My family loves hand knitted socks, and I reckon if I start knitting socks they'll all want at least one pair, if not more. And I've just put it off because I usually use double pointed needles for the bottom of sleeves, which I started because I realised quite quickly that for a lot of sweaters you can't get like tiny circulars small enough, which would have been my first preference when I very first started knitting sweaters. But I realised that isn't like readily available, so that I had to like find a different method. So I've been using double pointed needles, and when I knitted the Darling wrap, tested the Darling wrap from Knitting for Olive, you knit the sleeves bottom up, and to be honest, it was quite a scarring experience starting those sleeves. I remember I shared a lot about it on my stories at the time, but I kept getting like bad ladders and my joints weren't good, and because it was two knit, 2 purl ribbing, it looked horrific, and it took me several days to properly get the sleeve started, and I just hated that process. and I think that's really what put me off trying it again. I feel like I'm starting to reach that point that I really need to conquer those silly last fears. You know, I used to be terrified of dropping stitches and picking things up, and now I've fixed mistakes in lace work and I rip back on things even though I didn't want to, and like I've done all of these things, but I feel like the one thing I'm really missing is learning how to knit small circumferences. And when I saw that Laura had designed this pattern, I thought this might be the thing to do, because it is quite small. Obviously isn't like an actual heel on it, so I didn't have to think about the heel first. The gauge wasn't too bad, so I just thought this is the opportunity to like push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit, and that is why I love test knitting, because it can really like push you to try something you haven't before. So yes, I put off basically knitting these so long that Laura managed to release the pattern before I did it, but now they are indeed done. And it wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be, actually. Laura and I had a chat about knitting this small circumference, and she's like, you just gotta do it, just try it, it'll be fine. She is a massive magic loop person, so these are knitted magic loop. I used my Pony Perfect needles. They have like really good sharp tips, and I thought the cable on this is really soft and squishy. I do think the join was a little bit annoying towards the end, but I think I'm starting to think that maybe for magic loop you're better off with fixed, or having like fixed circular needles instead of these that are interchangeable, or having I guess the needle that you're not knitting with, have that be like smaller, so that the stitches slide a little bit better. But it was absolutely fine. Once I kind of got the hang of it, it worked out quite well. So I watched, I should say, the video from Nimble Needles that are linked down below, but I thought his way of describing magic loop just really clicked for me. It's sometimes when you have to learn new techniques, I think it's good to watch lots of things, and sometimes it's not. I ended up going with sort of what he described, and I quite liked it. So now I just need to knit a partner. I might have to knit two though, or knit a completely new mitten, because I don't know if you can tell, but especially my cast off here is just so tight, and so is the thumb, and this as well. My gauge is probably off, so I might wash them and see. This is still, it still hasn't been washed yet, and you can probably see because I do think that the stitches always lie a bit nicer when it's been washed. So to finish off the Sock Saga, I might talk about what I have bought to try sock knitting, which I'm going to do alongside some big projects that are coming up. So I'll finish off with talking about my test knit, and then some of the other yarns. So I decided to buy some sock yarn. So I saw that Creator Bear, or Rebecca from the Creator Bear, she also has a podcast that I'll link down below together with her Instagram. She had knitted a pair of socks from Sari Nordland, who is a Finnish designer who also has a podcast. If you haven't seen that, I'll also link that. And she used to work for this Finnish yarn brand called Novita, and she has a pattern called the Taival socks, which are like quite long calfed cabled DK weight socks. So I saw that Rebecca had knitted those, and I really liked the look of them. She's like, oh, they're brilliant, like you definitely get on with that. So I decided to buy yarn for knitting those socks. So that's what I bought these Novita yarns for. Novita is, as I said, a Finnish yarn brand, and it is 75% wool and 25% polyamide. I've had several Finns tell me that this is absolutely brilliant yarn. It's machine washable. It's meant to be quite, like, you could do horrible things to this yarn and it would still survive, and if it's tough enough for Finns, it's tough enough for me. I found this in a shop, in an online shop called Snuffle Bean, so I'll link the shop down below if you're also interested in Novita, because it's not that readily available. I did consider buying a Vetta and holding it double, but I just thought this was really good for the price. So this is 100-gram balls, and 100-gram balls, and they're £6 each, which works out cheaper than a Veta, especially if you need double. So this is Novita Nala, and it's one of the yarns that she recommends. They didn't have exactly the colour that maybe I would have chosen, so I've gone for this like pink colour, but I feel like that could be cute as well. Also, for in the quality Nala, my favourite colour was this one, which I can't remember the name of, but it's like a chestnutty orangey colour. So I bought that because it does say that one ball should be enough for one pair of socks, so just need to look for the right pattern. I also thought, to make my life easier, I bought a lot of sock yarn, can you tell? I bought the Novita Bellesta. It's called Seven Brothers. It's basically Aran weight sock yarn with a hint of glitter. Do you see that? Like a very faint silver glitter throughout. And then finally I bought just 100 grams of Novita's 4-ply or usual like sock weight, and that quality is called Venla. This is a grey, same composition, so there you go. It's like just a classic grey. I thought always be useful, so I have those yarns to get started on. And then I also bought from Rebecca, who I got inspired by the Tyrol socks. She also bought from a place called Woolly Knits, and they sold sock yarns. So if you bought, they had like a kit, so you got this like sock pattern called Soulmate socks. So they're like socks with like a bit of lace work on them, and 2 coins of 200 grams of yarn for £10. So it's from a website called Woolly Knit. I think I mentioned that. So this is like the sock base, which feels fine to me. So I think this is the colour Harvest Brown, and this is the colour Mink. I probably wouldn't knit these two together, but you could probably get away. Like you could probably pair them with one of that. Actually, that could be quite a cute combo. But I just thought for £10, 400 grams of sock yarn is quite cheap. So I decided to buy that and try that from Woolly Knits. And then I also bought from them when I was ordering anyway. This is actually what spurred the whole order on in the first place, because I'd seen Rebecca use this as well. Can you tell I've been very inspired by Rebecca? So this is like 100% British wool in Nep Cream. It says Aran weight in it, but I don't think this is Aran weight. Doesn't look like if you compare it to this, like I don't think they look the same weight. And yeah, there's 500 grams in a cone, and these are, I think they're £18. So this would be enough for a full sweater for me. It does smell quite woolly. Not woolly, it smells quite sheepy. I'm sure once you knit it up it's fine. I already feel like it's smelling less. But I just love this sort of neps in it. So I need to decide what that's for. And then finally from them I also ordered a handcuff yarn. So here you go. This is, I can't remember what colour this is. Do you see the sun is coming out? It looks so nice in the sun. So this is probably, I reckon it's called cinnamon or something. So this is 200 grams. It's also fingering weight yarn, and I quite liked how it's almost a little bit like melange, as Filcolana would call it, or like a bit variegated, so you'd have a bit of colour. Can you tell I'm really into like oranges just now? So yes, I don't know what this will be for. I just thought I wanted to see what the yarn would be like. So I bought that, and then finally I was really inspired by Marie from By Bastrop. She has a Danish knitting podcast, so I will link to her down below as well. But she knitted the Sandkorn slipover from Mille Strikker, who's a Danish designer, and the slipover was her first design. It's like a keyboard vest. And she's just released a pattern in English, which I know because I helped proofread it. And I think if you're wanting to challenge yourself with something that requires a bit more thinking, that pattern is very, very good. And they had, Woolly Knit had quite a good deal, because I saw the Knit Pearl Girl or Sophie like speak about a bit more rustic yarns. I feel like rustic yarns are very in just now. And so I had a look different places, and I was going to buy some off Etsy, which I might still do, because I'd quite like to try Shetland wool or some of the sort of more local wools to me. but yes, I bought 10 balls of this blue faced Leicester. This is in the colour mid brown, and I don't know if you can tell, I'll hold it up. It's like quite a cold brown, with lots of different light colours through it, not spun too tight, so I thought that could be quite nice in a slip over. They had an offer on, if you bought 5 balls you got that, you know, a certain amount of discount. So I bought 10 balls in total. So this is, as I said, 100% natural blue faced fleece that's been used for this, and it's DK weight, so it has 102 meters per ball of yarn, and it should have a tension of 22 stitches. So I bought that, and luckily you'll be happy to know that that's all the yarns I bought. Also shout out to Knitwear by Mackie, who after watching my last episode contacted me to say that she designs socks, some really beautiful socks. I'll pop in some pictures so you can see them. And she asked me if I would, if she could send me some of her patterns. As I said, I wanted to knit some socks. So a shout out to her because her patterns are really, really pretty, and she doesn't have the biggest following, but I really like what she sent through, and I'm really excited to knit them. So I thought that was something I wanted to mention as well. I really like, she just released some with like trees on them that she posted in black and white, and I feel like that would be up a lot of people's street. Certainly up mine. I think it's really pretty. I think I'm still a little bit of time away from knitting colourwork socks, but who knows. So that is all my acquisitions as well, which I kind of skipped ahead a little bit because I thought this whole segment kind of flowed much better. So hopefully next time I'll check in and I will maybe have cast on a pair of socks, who knows. But otherwise I'll just have to keep you posted. I think I'm going to try to knit another pair of Magic Loop, because I always thought I would hate Magic Loop, but actually I quite enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to have to give that a go. I also bought the, after watching This Nanny Knits, or Lucy's podcast, she knits lots of socks, and it certainly made me want to buy all the hand-dyed yarn for socks. But she uses the Chiagu the 9-inch circulars. So I bought a pair of those to try. So that's the really short circulars. And I also bought double pointed needles. So I have all 3 major methods, maybe besides 2 circulars, which actually, having tried Magic Loop now, could also be quite a good thing to try. I might consider 2 circulars. So yeah, I'd love to hear how you prefer to knit socks. It's also because then you can knit 2 at a time, and I feel like I'd quite enjoy having both done at the same time. So I'll keep you posted how the Sock Saga continues, and if I actually finish a pair of socks in 2020, 2021, what a crazy year it's been. So finally, last but certainly not least, it's just a quick update on where I have gotten to on my other test knit, and all the needles are poking through. This is my first sweater test knit for the lovely Lizzie from Hive Knits. I'm knitting it in the colour red squirrel meatballs. So I'm knitting it in this colour, which is recommended yarn. So we have 1 strand of Filcolana Vetta, and 1 strand of Filcolana Telia in red squirrel. The sweater is a top down raglan construction with short row shaping. That's where the short rows are. Short row shaping in the back, and then have fisherman rip sleeves, which, if you have never knitted, have fisherman's rip, which I hadn't. It's knit by having 1 round of regular ribbing, and then 1 round where you knit 1 below and just purl 1. I think it's called half because for fisherman's rip you knit and purl both below, and that means it's reversible, whereas obviously this isn't, because on this side the knit stitches are knit 1 below, which gives a different look, whereas on the back is obviously the purl stitches that you see, so they're like kind of wide. I know Lizzie talks a lot more about the design process and her thoughts and all of this, so I would really recommend that you take a look at Lizzie's podcast if you want to hear more about all of this, or if she just uploaded another episode where she talks about how you get started with designing and how you, like what she did, because this is her very first design, so the first sweater. And yeah, so far so good. The reason I have re-recorded is that last week when I filmed, I had split for sleeves the night before, and well, I had planned to split for sleeves, and then the numbers weren't adding up, and I couldn't figure out where I'd missed increases, and I was feeling really stupid, and I was really upset because this is a lot of knitting. The gauge is 24 stitches to 10 centimeters, so it's a very tight gauge for me, at least. You know, it creates a very, very fine fabric. I was absolutely gutted because we had a knitting group last Sunday, and I was desperate for this to be my knitting group knit, because now the body's just stocking it. And I was like, how have I messed it up? At the moment, I have 110% knitting mojo. I can't stop. I want to knit all day, every day. But to be honest, on the weekends, I usually have fairly decent amount of knitting time. However, on weekdays, I just basically only get to knit when Fela has gone to bed at about 9 o'clock at night. And so I tend to knit quite late into the evening. And as we all know, it's when, you know, don't knit after wine and after bedtime, because that's always when you make silly mistakes. So I was absolutely gutted. The good thing is that Lizzie has several testers, and she is such a lovely, like, kind-hearted person. And I feel like last week I was so angry with myself, I would have come across as like something being wrong with the project, and I don't actually think there is, because the mistake was all on mine. But I've kind of slept on it. It still looks a little bit short, but but then when I hold it up like this, I think I tried it on just as I'd split for sleeves, and I find that when you've just split for sleeves, garments always fit a bit funny, because you kind of need you need the underarm to like settle. Like when I hold it like this, you can see it looks completely normal. But last week when I held it up, honestly, it looks like everything looked wrong. And I think I was still, you know, when you've had a mistake, I'm still in that kind of slightly upset zone. So I'm so ready to add many centimeters to this, and I can't wait to wear it. It's such a me colour. I love the squishiness of the sleeve. I'm so excited that I found the perfect project to add, the perfect project to finally use up this yarn that's been in my stash for ages. So yeah, I cannot wait for it to be done, and I think this is it's classic, but with a twist. I love the like thick raglan, like that. There's a few more stitches in the raglan and the sleeves. Oh, it's just perfect. So this will be for a little while my sort of main whip, because I've just said yes to Testknit for easy ass knit, or so it's not ass as in bum, it is ES, easy ass knit, which is a Danish design company that makes very like different patterns that are fairly beginner friendly. They have very like descriptions and videos and stuff, and they've contacted me for a few other designs where I've just been too busy, had too much on my needles, that kind of thing, so I've had to say no. But they are making a long sleeve version of the easy evening dress, and I basically said from the start, like, if you want a tester, I'm very keen. So I'm waiting for the yarn to come in for that, but it's a roll neck dress with long sleeves, and I presume that it's going to take me some while to, you know, knit a full dress. So I really need to get a move on this, but I think at least the body will be fairly mindless, and I know that Lizzie is fine with just one sleeve only, so I'll certainly get started on the sleeve. And I hope that I usually don't find sleeve island too bad. I think sleeve island is less of a problem when you're bigger size because the body is where all the stitches are, and you know, proportionally the sleeves have less stitches, so I usually find sleeves up fairly fast. So even though this is half fisherman's rip, I'm hoping it'll be quite fast. And I quite enjoy knitting it as well. The knit below means that each row feels a bit different. So hopefully the next time I see you, I will have finished quite a lot of the body, at least, if not the whole body. And then I'll have started on the easy evening dress. As you might also be able to tell, unless I squeeze in a few of these smaller knits. It might be a little while before I'm back actually, because the easy evening dress will take some time, I presume, to really make progress on. So yes, it might be a few more weeks before you see me, but then it's Christmas time and I'm so ready for Christmas. I have almost kept to my time frame, so the personal update here at the end of the podcast is going to be shorter. I am in a much better place than I've been for a long time. Fela is getting like so much easier to manage. She's 5 months now. She's so smart and funny and loving and just such a smart cookie. Earlier this week I taught her to take a bow, you know, when they like bend like this, and she learned it in less than 5 reps and I was absolutely amazed. So she's just such a joy to be a pet parent to. She's such a snuggler, which is everything I ever wanted in a dog. She was definitely meant for me because she loves to be right next to you, on top of you. So when I'm in the home office and she wakes up from a nap, she comes over and onto my lap at my desk, and it's just amazing. So that's becoming much easier. And I'm really excited because my mum and sister are coming to visit end of November, which will be so lovely. I have not seen any of my family for more than a year. I last saw them last August, so it's going to be so good to see them. And they're coming to see the house and Fela. So that's really also pushing us to finish the house. So for anyone who's a bit newer here on the channel, my partner and I bought our first house in May, so we've been in almost 6 months now, and we've kind of reached that stage that we are about, you know, 95%, well, not 90, maybe 85% done with everything. You know, we bought the very, very big pieces of furniture and we unpacked most of the boxes with 4 boxes left, and then we just kind of stopped. It was kind of like, you know, we probably haven't done any major changes since June, so I think we're kind of ready to start doing the next bits, you know, buying a few decorations to make things more homely. So that's what we'll be doing until my family arrives, which I'm actually really excited for as well, because I love this house, and it's so frustrating when you know you're so close to finishing but you haven't. So yes, that is literally all for the podcast today. I hope it was slightly less scatterbrained. I feel like it still was a bit scatterbrained, because the problem is I write, you know, all these notes, but I'm not very good at looking at them. So I'm not sure they're always that helpful, but hopefully I have covered everything. Otherwise I'll just have to recover things in the next episode. So I hope you really enjoyed watching and that I will see you soon again. I appreciate every single comment and message that I get from you guys. It is often what keeps me going, so I really appreciate it. Anyway, I hope you have the loveliest day, that you got lots of knitting done while listening to all my rambling, and I'll see you soon. Bye!